Well, as promised, we have a mailbag show for you today, answering your questions all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, May 17th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with a winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And as promised, we have a mailbag show. Happy Friday to all. Might go a little bit long today. I apologize in advance for that. Trying to keep them obviously all around 30. This one might go a little longer depending on how many we get through here. We got a boatload. I appreciate you all so much. I remember the days, a few years ago when I would ask for, a mailbag show, and I would, 2 or 3 questions, 4 questions was a good day for me and whatnot. And so we got a boatload. We got like well over 50 in total, 50, 70, 100, something like that. So what I tried to do, I put them all on a sheet. And what I tried to do is go after questions that had a lot of other similar questions that kind of were like in the same category, right? So there's a lot of questions in here about Javy. There's a lot about Scott Harris. There's a lot about AJ Hinch. There's a lot about Tarik Skubal, right? That there's a lot of questions that have similar genre questions asked by other people. So I tried to pick the questions that fit that. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to get through. Again, we're going to get through as many as we possibly can. I don't know how many that is going to be at the end of the day, but let's try. Okay, let's try to get through as many as possible. The first one comes from Insanity 1995able on YouTube. Says, let me preface this by saying I've gone this year not acknowledging Javy because knowing he's going to be a long-term plague, and also the offense lately isn't just him, but I have to ask, when is enough with Javy Baez? Mentions later on about how the Tigers cut scope when he was doing bad on both sides of the plate. But he wasn't this bad. He also was on the last year of a deal. Javy still has obviously several years left. I'll tell you, this is what I do know. There is no chance that Javy is finishing out this contract. There is no chance. I would be absolutely floored if this dude actually played the rest of his contract with the Detroit Tigers. What does that mean in the short term? I don't know. I mentioned this earlier in the week. Look, I don't think it's justifiable. And some people are like, you should have cut him a year ago. I totally get that crowd as well. I don't think it's justifiable if you go into June and this dude's OPS still starts with the number 4 and he's still literally the worst hitter in baseball. You can't justify throwing him out there every day. And there was a point made by a couple of people in their Javy questions as well, mentioned you're already going to be paying him anyways. So you might as well not make it so that he's actively costing the team. And that's something that we talked about earlier in the week as well. So I really do think that we are looking, and again, it'd be one thing if this dude was putting up Gold Glove caliber shortstop this season, but so far his defense is actually graded out pretty negatively. And that's not to say that he's a garbage defender or anything, but that was like the one asset he had last year was he was an unbelievable, plus graded defender. He hasn't been that this season. He's been actually pretty negative in most metrics. So I don't know how you can justify him lasting the year. Now, if he gets hot, and I said this earlier this week as well, if his OPS starts with the number 6, he's not going anywhere, right? He's got a 630, a 620 OPS, then he's going to be here, right? He's not going anywhere this year then. But the problem is that would be a 200-point improvement on the OPS side because it's like 415 or 420 or something like that at the moment. So that's kind of where I stand with him. But I will go absolutely nuts on here. If we're like post All-Star break and this dude still has a 450 OPS, I will lose it on air. That's my opinion. How far away is Ryan Kreidler from returning from his injury? And once he returns, I'm assuming that here Zach McKinstry automatically off the team. This is from James on YouTube. So I have no update on Ryan Kreidler. I would imagine they're hoping he can be back at some point in the next month or so. I would imagine, the next few weeks we'll probably get more updates on him. I think we're about due actually earlier next week for a minor league injury update organization wide. I think they're doing minor leagues once a month. So we'll see. We might have an update for you there in the coming weeks, but I don't know if it's automatically just like Kreidler's healthy, so see ya McKinstry. I don't know if it's that, black and white necessarily. But I do think that it's going to be a conversation. The other thing that's helping McKinstry is the fact that he's a lefty. Now, I would argue it doesn't matter if you're righty-lefty, if you have like a 570 or a 580 OPS. I don't really care if you're a righty-lefty, but like that means something to the organization and the coaching staff. And Kreidler's obviously a righty. But I do think that his health, Ryan Kreidler's health, is going to open up a lot more conversations than we have at our disposal right now. Right now, there's nobody else on the 40-man besides Javy and McKinstry that can play everyday shortstop at the major league level. And I think at least when Kreidler comes back, that will somewhat open the door for more of those types of conversations. Also from James on YouTube, Winfield Perez seems to quickly have the mental readiness when he was brought up from Toledo. At the plate, how will you know if players like Jace Young and Justin Henry Malloy also have the mental readiness unless they are brought up and given a chance like Perez? No, you're absolutely right. And I think that is why you are not seeing Colt Keith get demoted and why Spencer Torkelson was like never going to get demoted, right? Because they need to adjust to major league pitching. The gap between AAA pitching and major league pitching, there's an argument it's never been wider in the history of our beautiful sport. So you're seeing a ton of rookies struggle. Wyatt Langford, Jackson Holiday, right? Like you can go down the list, Cherios. Like there is a ton of young players who were struggling early on or are still struggling this year. And I think that's why. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think they need to be, at some point, you got to find out what you have. And like Jace Young is a little bit different. He's got a little more time, I think, until we have that conversation. But with Malloy, yeah, absolutely. Like this, at some point, you just kind of have to see what you have in some of these guys. So we'll see. From Jake Phillips on YouTube, do you think if Scott Harris went out and grabbed JD Martinez for $12 million this offseason and stuck him in the 3-hole, the Tigers offense would be miles better, or is one roster move wouldn't affect the outcome too much? So, clearly, Justin Timberlake, JD Martinez has an OPS around 800 right now. And he's hitting about 280 or 290. The thing with Martinez, and I'm not going to give you the positional thing that we talked about in the winter because I don't really care at this point. I want people that can hit a baseball. Okay. But I do think that, when you look at how much improved will the offense be, well, he would be a DH every day. And because they're not going to put him in the corner outfield with who we have at our disposal. And a lot of times the DH this year has been the corner outfielder that isn't playing corner outfield. And there's been a couple of days, right, where like Colt Keith was a DH a couple weeks ago. We have the 2-catcher thing, right? So it would certainly help a little bit. But I think it's probably closer to the latter. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have done it, right? Again, I want people that can hit a baseball at the moment. So like I'm not saying that that's a bad idea in hindsight. But in terms of like how much different would the offense look with a 797 OPS in the DH spot every night, it'd be better. It'd be better, but I don't think that it would take this lineup from the depths that it's in right now and that it's seen over the last 2 weeks to being substantially better, because most nights he'd be filling in for a spot that already one of the only good hitters on the team plays, right? So that again, with roster fit, if he was a second baseman, yeah, it would be a you know what I mean, a lot bigger of a difference, because we've gotten 450 OPS production out of second base or shortstop or you name it. Okay, let's keep the ball rolling here. We have quite a few more to get through. You guys are awesome. We'll get into all of those right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our new friends over at Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folk in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back on Monday recapping a series against the Arizona Diamondbacks over in the West Coast. Some late games this weekend. It'll be fun. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the free 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Going over your questions. Next up here, we have Hayden on YouTube. I'm not saying I think he will be fired soon, but how long do you think Scott Harris's leash is if he keeps refusing to address this quote-unquote offense, if you can even call it that anymore? We got a lot of Scott Harris questions and a lot of AJ Hinch questions, most of them kind of grouped together. So I'll kind of add to your question, Hayden, a little bit, and also talk about AJ Hinch. We'll start with AJ, I guess, because I think that's easier. AJ Hinch is not going anywhere anytime soon. He just signed an extension. The organization believes in him. They think he's the right man for the job. AJ Hinch is going nowhere. And I know a lot of people have a lot of frustrations with AJ and the lineup management and, the platooning and all of that. In my eyes, this becomes a lot better when Scott Harris actually gives him major league caliber hitters, right? Right now, he is rearranging chairs on the Titanic, right? He is given, rocks and dirt and is asked to make chicken salad. Like this is no manager would make this offense like a top 5 offense in baseball. So he needs to be given the talent. And that then directs us to the Scott Harris conversation. It's not his leash is long enough to where this conversation of like, oh, is Scott Harris here for the long term? Is he going to get canned? That's not a conversation we're going to be having for a long time. And by a long time, I don't mean like 5 years. But like this season, don't even do like the mental gymnastics in your head of like, oh, like if this happens or this happens, can they justify firing him? Whatever. It's not happening. He's going to be here for at least this year, probably next year as well. I don't anticipate him going anywhere anytime soon. And like he's what, in year 2 or like we're 2 years into this thing, I guess. I think this offseason will be very telling. And this is a comment we have a little bit later as well, kind of clumped into this. Last offseason, for as much as, you look back and you go, wow, like how laughable is it that this front office was preaching that they didn't want to sign people in to block at bats for young players with how bad the offense has been. The free agency class wasn't that great. And that's something that Detroit Sports Addict brought up in one of their questions as well, is just, like this was a weak free agent class. I think this year is going to be extremely telling. This is a much better free agent class than it was last year. For starters, you have players at positions the Tigers directly need that are going to be on the table and on the market. And on top of that, just the sheer fact that it's going to be, year 3 or heading into year 3 for him. I think that will be kind of the most telling offseason yet. If we're, if we don't add any bats this offseason, this winter, and we go into the next one, then a lot more people in the fan base and a lot more like the personalities and whatnot that cover the team are going to get a lot louder, and that seat is going to get a lot hotter for Scott Harris. And but if you're anticipating, oh, is this like right around the corner? I know you said specifically Hayden, at least in your question, like you don't think he's getting fired anytime soon. You're right. Like I think the leash is it's not this year, and I don't even think it's really like after next year would be like the soonest. After next year would be the earliest that conversation I see popping up is. Okay. This is another one on YouTube. Yawn something. I'm sorry if I YouTube names are kind of funny sometimes. If the objective of the season was to go with youth, why not leave Keith at second and Carpenter in left full-time for their development? Get rid of the righty-lefty splits, at least for these two players. What do you think? That was another question that Detroit Sports Addict, I know, tweeted at me. Yeah, I do think there's an argument for it. I also think that there is like right now, this team is still trying to win ball games, right? This is not like, at least it shouldn't be like a punting season. You're 500 in a weak division. I know everybody, there are 4 teams, or well, now not anymore, 3 teams over 500 or whatever. I know that teams in this division have gotten off to a hot start, but this should not be viewed as goodness, a punting season. Like you should be trying to win every single game still. We're not like tanking in May. So I think that from AJ's perspective, he's still trying to put the best lineup out there that he thinks is going to do well. And I know, again, we already talked about it. Some people are frustrated with AJ, etc. But I think it's a fine line you have to walk. At some point, I agree with you. But I do agree with you that like the half in, half out approach is not the best for anybody's development. I would agree with that. From Stando 1969 on YouTube. On tomorrow's mailbag, could you do analysis of where the Tigers rank with RISP and how individuals rank with RISP? Absolutely. Everyone knows that's one of my favorite things to do. The Tigers currently, also, I have a few people that have asked where I find my RISP stats. So I'm not kidding. I go to Google and I literally type in RISP stats 2024. I'm not kidding. And one of the first links that comes up is Baseball Reference 2024 Major League Baseball team splits RISP. And it will bring up all of the team RISP stats for all 30 teams, rank them in order. And then if you click on the actual team, then it brings up all of the individual players on said team's RISP stats. The Tigers rank 24th in RISP OPS and 19th in RISP batting average. So not quite bottom 10 in average, but almost bottom 5 in OPS. Not great, right? When you're talking about individual players, I'm not going to go over all 17 players that have taken an at-bat with a runner in scoring position so far for the Tigers this year. But Matt Vierling stands out. His whole Tigers career, he's been dreadful with runners in scoring position. 161 average and a 472 OPS. Jake Rogers, 429 OPS. Parker Meadows, a 0 batting average. 0. Literally did not record a single hit with RISP. Colt Keith, 553 OPS, which is actually higher than his season. But the big 3 that everyone really cares about, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, are all actually right next to each other in these rankings. 670 OPS for Riley Green, 653 for Kerry Carpenter, and 611 for Spencer Torkelson. And all of their averages are between 240 and 250. That can't happen. You are not going to be a good major league offense if the 3 hitters you are consistently relying the most on are well below league average hitters with runners in scoring position. That has to change. It's been something we've been talking about with all 3 of these guys for the last year or 2 years, depending on when they got called up. It's something that needs to be improved upon for all three of them, because all three of them have had their struggles with RISP. At the top, you have Mark Canha, not really too surprising, very professional hitter, 850 OPS, 267 average. Andy Ibanez, 333 average, 869 OPS. Not a ton of at-bats there, for whatever that's worth. And then Javy, for whatever it's worth to you, 698 OPS, 296 batting average with RISP. One of the only things he's consistently contributing to this team, which is not worth the contract, by the way, but worth noting. Okay, let's keep it rolling here. We have one more break, and then we will get to as many questions again as I can here in segment 3. All right, we'll do that right after this. Going to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate you all greatly for tuning in. Let's go to Rick on YouTube. Says, in your opinion, what needs to be done to make the team competitive? And realistically, what do you think will be done to salvage the season? So genuinely, and this is like such a boring answer, but from the bottom of my heart, the thing that would change the most on this team's outlook would be if Spencer Torkelson and Colt Keith started hitting like we expected them to going into the year, right? That would completely change the outlook of this team. If Spencer Torkelson had an OPS in the 800s and Colt Keith had was a league average hitter, even had an OPS in like the lower mid 700s. Riley Green has been doing what he's doing. Mark Canha doing what he's doing. That's over half a lineup of pretty solid hitters if those two were to step up, right? Right now, it's obviously not. And I know that, again, that's like super boring and it's not some big flashy move or anything that everyone always asks me all the time. There is nothing that the Tigers are going to do in May that will change the outlook of this offense that could possibly have more of an impact going forward than just simply the players that are here that we expected more out of started doing more. I can't be any more straightforward than that. Torkelson has not been even close to what we thought he was going to be. Colt Keith obviously has not been close. Javy Baez, no one had high expectations. He's somehow gone even below those, right? We kind of broke this down a little bit yesterday. The guys that you thought were going to be the 3, 4, 5 hitters in the middle of your lineup this season have done nothing. That again, nothing that the Tigers will do this year will have even close to as big of an impact as those guys hitting would. And what do I think will be done to salvage the season? I don't expect them to bring in, make a huge trade to bring in a big bat mid-season. If that does happen, it's going to happen in the winter. I think that really they're just going to try to call up and send down. They're going to give some kids some opportunities, especially once we start getting into June, July. I really don't think that we're in for at the deadline, we're going to trade for a big bat and it's going to push us over the edge. We'll see. We'll see where the Tigers, if they're buyers, which is hard to believe right now, but we'll see what they look like at the deadline, the organization. But that's kind of where I stand. Okay. Hopefully I answered your question. From Splash on YouTube. As others have mentioned, I would be really interested in learning from you about how options work and what it means in the grand scheme of things. Sure. So really quickly, when you're added to the 40-man roster, you have the 26-man roster and then the 40-man roster, right? So you got 14 minor leaguers that are on big league payroll, despite the fact that they're not on the 26-man major league roster. Once you're put on the 40-man, you have 3 options. Okay. You're given 3 options. That is 3, abilities, we'll call it. Their options. That's what they are. You have 3 options. And what that means is you can be sent down to the minor leagues at the start of the season, or really anytime, I guess, 3 times. The misconception out there is that every single time you're sent down to the minors, that's an option. That's not true. You only use one option a year. So when a decision is made in spring training, for instance, to send someone down to the minor leagues, you are using one of those three options. So like the other day, Akil Baddoo got called up and then sent back down. He didn't burn through an option. He did not burn through one of his minor league options when he just was on the, sitting on the bench for 2 games. The Tigers, I know a lot of people are mad at the front office right now. They're not that stupid. They're not going to burn through somebody's minor league option, a one of only 3 you get over the course of a full contract, just to have him sit on the bench for 2 games. So his option was used at the beginning of the season, though, when they sent him down to the minors. And once you play 20 games of minor league baseball down there, then officially you have used one of your options. And then you can get called up and sent down as many times as you want. I think the limit's actually 5, but you're not burning an option every time you are sent down to the minors. And then there's service manipulation, right? You don't become a free agent until you've spent 6 years on the roster, which is why you see, people call up a lot of prospects in May specifically because, then it's not 1 year of service. There's a lot of stuff in the collective bargaining agreement that have been attempted to combat that. I'm not sure they've really done a great job, the players union, in combating that, but one of the many ways you can, and that's why you see a lot of these conversations with these players. Okay. Okay, next up from Joshua, we have, I just went to a Whitecaps game. Is there any prospects to keep an eye on? I absolutely love questions like this. Yes, plenty. Luke Gold is a guy that a lot of people have been warming up to recently. I really liked Austin Murr when he was drafted a few years ago now. But Roberto Campos is down there, one of the biggest international signings in Tigers history. He's been somewhat, I think, disappointing would be a fair word, at the plate so far in his professional career. But lately, he's been starting to lift the ball a lot more and hit pretty well. Max Anderson, who was just drafted, I think, last year, has been doing pretty solid there as well. Isaac Pacheco continues to struggle, unfortunately. He's a guy to watch out for. Peyton Graham has been struggling at the plate mightily this year, but is a guy to keep an eye out for as well. So those are some, at least, hitters to keep an eye out for sure. Next up from, I believe, Eric Chamberlain on YouTube. So basically, when does the lack of offense become a management problem? When does it become about AJ's carousel lineups every day? About team construction, he mentions about how Canna was supposed to give veteran leadership, graduating players from the minors to the majors. We've been horrible at that. Both Green and Tork's graduation was clunky at best. Now Keith Meadows are both atrocious. When does ownership step up with some money to spend on players? Also, can you add a down on the farm segment once a week? It would definitely add to this podcast. I used to do that back a few years ago on Fridays. We would have a segment dedicated to minor league updates. And I don't know, they didn't do too well, but I think if we have an off day once a week, I have no problem in every off day episode doing a minor league update. That's a pretty good idea. So maybe we'll take a look at doing something like that if people are interested in that kind of stuff. In terms of the rest, look, I last season I remember having this conversation. And this is not exactly how it works, but if you were to break the Tigers organization down into 4 groups, the development part of the Tigers organization to 4 groups. Minor league pitching, major league pitching, minor league hitting, major league hitting. The Tigers under Scott Harris, but more specifically, credit where credit is due, Ryan Garko, have taken massive improvements on the development side of things in pitching, obviously in the minor leagues, and very obviously pitching in the major leagues. A lot of that is Chris Fetter as well. Offensively in the minors, you have seen a lot of improvement over the last several seasons. Again, the Ryan Garko kind of era, you've seen a lot of improvements. The thing that they have lacked for years now, and it's still rearing its ugly head, I completely agree with you, is the transition from minor league to major league development. They have been dreadful at it. And I think that is, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. That's pretty obvious. That's a huge part of what this team wants to be. When Scott Harris's introductory press conference talked about developing and retaining young talent. Well, that's great, but you have to continue development. And this is something I have harped on for so long. Development does not stop at the major league level. I want to put it on a t-shirt. I want to buy ad space on a poster and put it in downtown Detroit. Development does not stop when you reach the majors. It's such a common misconception that, like, oh, you made it to the show, you got through the minor league circuit, there you go, you're set, right? You made it. No, especially not in baseball. That is not it. And the Tigers struggle mightily at developing major league young talent. I absolutely agree with you. I think that that's something that they desperately need to try to continue bringing in outside personnel to give a different perspective, because they fired all their hitting coaches after the 2022 season, and it didn't, I guess 2023 was better. But like, look, now in so far in 2024, the offense is dreadful, and people are calling for the heads of the hitting staff again. So like, they need to find out how to unlock that 100%. I hope that was kind of the answer you were going for. That's again, tried my best there. Springer on YouTube, Jay Springer says, why don't the Tigers sign Brandon Belt to a 1-year contract? He's old, but he's still a better hitter than 80% of the current roster. I'll tell you what, if Brandon Belt played shortstop or second base or third base or center field, I think he would have been here a month ago. The issue is, I think that, again, they are going to give Torkelson his ABs, and they're not going to have an automatic DH either. That they made that clear in the offseason, as we alluded to earlier, not signing JD Martinez. Okay. I know we're over time here, but I'm going to keep ripping some of these. So sorry for the long show. From Nevada, Tom. Detroit living out west, getting back into Tigers baseball. Keep newbies in mind when throwing out stats and acronyms. I really do try. I'm sorry if I don't sometimes, but I will keep that in mind for sure. Also, can you recommend resources to get more familiar with inside baseball? Thank you. Absolutely. So Fangraphs writes articles. I wish more people knew that, and they are a fantastic resource. Obviously not specifically Tiger-centric, but around the league, you will find unbelievably smart people that are writing about the game. Also, Baseball Savant, another place that people don't realize, writes articles. So those are two really good ones. Then you start getting into, if you want like minor league updates, Tigers Minor League Report, two of the greatest guys in the business, their whole staff, obviously, but Raj and Chris are fantastic human beings and do a great job over there. So if you're looking for Tigers kind of more integrated stuff, then I would recommend them for sure. Matthew on YouTube, if the offense continues to slump, how big of a trade piece do Skubal and Job become? Oh, Matthew, you sly dog. Yeah, so I had brought up that Skubal that you should not just immediately hang up the phone if somebody called on Skubal last year before he came back from injury, and everyone got really upset at me. And then he started pitching like the best pitcher in baseball, and I was like, just kidding, everyone, just kidding. Now the conversation is back because the offense is so bad. And Tarik Skubal is a Boris client. And when Boris clients don't usually sign contract extensions. And he's already had 2 major arm surgeries. And all of these things are piling up to, I think when you look at all of those factors, it's pretty hard not to go, well, it's going to be on the table. Look, I'll put it this way. And we're going to have this conversation way more in depth when we get closer to the trade deadline. Okay. I promise you. And then again in the winter, and then probably again until it happens. I don't think the Tigers are going to actively shop Tarik Skubal. I don't think this is going to be, we're going to go call other teams. We're trying to find a trade partner. We need to unload him. I don't think that that's the mindset. This dude has legitimately the Cy Young favorite in several books. Okay. Like this is an incredible talent we have in our hands. They're not going to actively try to get rid of that, especially now because of a month and a half of poor hitting. They're going to wait to see how how the season continues to progress. That being said, because of all the factors I just laid out, if someone offered the Tigers 3 of their top 10 hitting prospects in their organization, one of which might be the best hitting prospect in their organization, they're going to heavily consider, if not take it. And again, that's not happening anytime soon. I'm not trying to be like the guy that starts, like Tarik Skubal is getting shopped. This is not a report. This is not a rumor. I don't know anything. Okay. This is not what I'm trying to do. But from a conversation perspective, I think as the season goes along, that's going to be way more of a hot topic. People are going to get really mad at each other. It's going to be very argumentative topic in this fan base. And I think it's totally justified to be, because I think that when you look at the offense that's coming through the system as well, Jace Young hopefully can play third base for you. You don't have a knight in shining armor for shortstop, right? You hope that Kreidler or Leonard can maybe. I don't think Eddie's Leonard is a shortstop at the major league level, but like we'll see. Parker Meadows has to prove that he can hit long term, right? Colt Keith has to prove that he's going to hit. Spencer Torkelson has to prove that he's going to hit. Like there are so many question marks long term that I think if the Tigers can get multiple bats, they're going to entertain it. That's all I'm saying. Underline that before you get mad at me. Okay. Before you get all upset about trading Skubal, all I'm saying is they're going to at least entertain it down the road. Anytime soon, though, you can kind of remove that from your brain. It's not happening in the next like couple of months or anything like that. Okay. I think that's close to everything. We have one more here. Why not trade from our pitching depth for a bat or two? Seems like a package of Matt Manning and Joey Wentz could bring us a competent bat. What possible trades could be made using our pitching depth? Thank you, from Don from Grand Rapids. Well, thank you, Dan, rather, not Don, Dan from Grand Rapids, for listening. Yeah, I think Matt Manning's a really easy trade topic right now. I think especially when Maeda's healthy, if he's pitching better, then he's going to become even a hotter topic. But the Tigers do have pitching depth, and that's something we talked about a lot over the winter, right? Was they should trade some of their pitching depth for, young controllable bats. I hope that is the case. I would love for that to happen. I think the deadline is going to be really interesting. If they're around 500, you could see a buy and sell, which I'm all for. But like Flaherty's on a 1-year deal. What kind of future is he going to have on this team? If the Tigers are out of it, which please don't be, but if they're completely out of it, then like Flaherty's going to be shopped, right? And you can try to get, how much are you going to get for half a year of Jack Flaherty? Look at what you got for half a year of all-star Michael Lorenzen. You got a prospect who's not hitting particularly well in Double-A at the moment. So, like, I think. I do think that this winter will be a huge opportunity for them to use their pitching depth to go get bats. But I don't think it's going to happen mid-season. Like, I hate saying that to like every single one of these questions, but like that's kind of where we're at. We have one from Garrett on Twitter and then one from Detroit Sports Addict on Twitter that I want to cover really quickly. Garrett on Twitter mentioned that when is it okay to start questioning Scott Harris? I think right now. What are we talking? I don't think we have to wait around for that. The offense is brutal, and there was 0 additions made. And again, we talked about the free agency market this winter was not exactly plentiful. It wasn't, oozing with talent, but to do, Mark Hanna and that's it, to an offense that 2 years ago was one of the worst offenses in modern baseball history, and last year was well below average, and it was still pretty poor, all things considered, I think you absolutely can start questioning it. And that I think people are that's not to say he hasn't done anything good, though. I mean, the pitching has absolutely flourished under him. Again, we'll see, drafts take a few years. Obviously, he made the big splash on draft night as well. I think you can question somebody. The first move they make, you can start questioning somebody. But again, to go to my point earlier, he's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And we'll start seeing the fruits of the labor or the lack of fruits here as, time progresses. And then again, from Detroit Sports Addict as well, mentioned Spencer Torkelson will reach the 1,500 career at-bat mark this season if he doesn't get things figured out by the end of the year. Are you comfortable labeling him a bust as a 1-1 draft status with lack of production? And if yes, what free agent first baseman would you like to see the Tigers pursue. So as we talked about earlier, the free agent class is a lot better. I think actually you might have been one of the people that brought up how the free agent class was better this year. I have no interest in Paul Goldschmidt at the moment. I don't think very many people are going to. Pete Alonso is going to be a big one if the Mets don't extend him. Rhys Hoskins had a pretty solid year so far. I'm okay on Anthony Rizzo. Josh Bell, no thank you. Rowdy Tellez, please no. Christian, and that's a please no because he crushes the Tigers every time, and he just has brought me so much pain. Christian Walker is awesome and is one of my favorite players in the league. He's going to be a free agent. That would be kind of a fun one to take a look at as well. But those are some of the names that are at least, again, unless they're extended from now until free agency, that could be on the market there. But everybody's going to look at Pete, right? And if the Mets are out of it, then he's going to be traded as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on that situation. But those are some of the first basemen. And as far as like the Torque thing, yeah, look, I mean, if he struggles this year, if this is what he's going to do for all year, if this is the production he's going to give us all season, then yeah, man, he's not going to be viewed as the first baseman of the future, and they're going to look for alternative options. This is the year. They're not going to wait around next year and the next year. They're not just going to wait for this dude to blow up. But that being said, currently we're a month and a half in, and he hit 30 homers and had 90 RBIs last year. Like they're not giving up on him on May 17th. But after October 3rd or October 5th or whenever the last game of the regular season is, if his numbers look like they do right now, then yeah, they're going to look elsewhere long term at first base. I firmly believe that this is a really important year for Torkelson, and it's not gone off to a great start. The last question I just really liked from Tyler Spring on YouTube says, "How was dinner with your dad?" It was really good. I appreciate that. We listened to records all night because he really liked his new record player. So. Yeah, always good to see the old man. Okay, way over time here. I wanted to get to as many questions as I possibly could. I'm so sorry if I did not get to yours specifically. Again, I tried to answer ones that would cover the widest range as possible. Get all the overlappers type of thing and similar questions kind of grouped in together. We will have more mailbags. I appreciate all you so much. Like I said at the beginning, I can remember struggling to get any questions when I would ask for a mailbag, and now I have far too many. So that is a great problem to have. I appreciate the support from all of you immensely. And it truly means the absolute world to me. So thank you again. Sorry if I didn't get to your question specifically, but I think we had a lot of good conversations. And we will be back on Monday against the Diamondbacks, recapping the series. That is, we have Skubal versus Ryan Nelson on Friday. Then we have Flaherty versus Zach Gallen on Saturday. And we have Matt Manning against Jordan Montgomery on Sunday. All three of those, well, Zach Gallen's been great as he always is, but Montgomery hasn't had an awesome year, and Ryan Nelson has an ERA over 5. Not that matters because we haven't scored in 19 innings. I'll catch you Monday. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.